What is going on, guys? Dan with Gear Focus here, and we are back with another video on the RED Komodo. So I know the last video didn't exactly show you guys everything you wanted to see, which is mainly the sample footage, which is why today we're gonna go ahead and look more in depth at some of that footage. We're gonna be looking at three main topics when it comes to the footage today, and that is how that footage grades, how that footage performs in the low light, and then we're also going to take a look at the R3D files, so the raw files versus the ProRes files on the camera. Now, before we get started with this, I got to give a huge shout out to RED as a company. They have been extremely helpful when it comes to everything that we need to know about this camera. They know that this camera is in beta, and they're actively reaching out to the users of the camera to get feedback. I actually had somebody that works at RED message me on Facebook to set up a time to get on the phone so that we could talk about having a connection directly to RED in case we had any issues moving forward. I actually had the inventor of the R3D file message me on Facebook to talk to me about how I could improve my image quality using that R3D file. So again, huge thank you to RED for being as awesome as you guys are. I have never experienced customer support quite like this, and you guys really are leading the way when it comes to customer support. So first, we're gonna look at some footage that Matt shot down in Baltimore. What I really like about this footage is we can see how the dynamic range applies to this camera. Now, all I did for color grading here was applied a built-in LUT in DaVinci Resolve that converts the log3G10 files from the Komodo to Rec 709. That's the only color grading I did on these particular files. Now, something I do want to mention with this footage from Baltimore is I actually went into the raw settings in DaVinci Resolve and I lowered the ISO from 250, which is what it was shot at, down to 100. Having the ability to change this stuff in post is fantastic, and we'll actually get to that a little bit later when we talk about some of the low light shots. Now, if we take a look at this shot from the pond outside Matt's neighborhood, we can see that the highlights recover really easily in the R3D. Again, all I did was throw the Rec 709 conversion LUT onto this footage, and you can see that we suddenly have detail back in our sky, and the edges of the building, you can see some of the sharpness return there as well. So the next shot is a shot of a car driving by, and I'm really glad Matt was able to get this shot for two separate reasons. So the first thing is we can have a good look at the dynamic range on this camera as we have the light coming through the trees, and we also have the shadows that are being cast by those exact same trees. Now, something that I did notice is that when the scene is very bright, the green does come through pretty punchy on these sensors, but going back into the post settings, we can dial that down a little bit more. Now, the other thing with this shot that I wanted to show you is what makes the Komodo so great for its price point. It's that global shutter. As the car is driving by, if I stop the image, you'll see that everything is still perfectly straight up and down. There's no bending, there's no warping of any of the straight lines from movement on this sensor. That's a really big deal because before now, most of the cameras that had a global sensor were $30,000, $35,000 and were not easily accessible to people like you and me. I don't know about you guys, but I don't exactly have the money to be spending more on a camera than I did on the car that I bought. Before we take a look at the low light performance, we have to remember that this camera is a cinema camera. Cinema cameras are designed to work in production environments that are well lit. Cinema cameras are not designed to be low light beasts like the A7S line. So now that we have that out of the way, let's take a look at some of these low light shots. Now, in the R3D files, I did notice that there was a pretty significant amount of noise when Matt shot at ISO 800. So because the shot was underexposed, I did bump the ISO up in post in DaVinci Resolve, but when I did that, I got a ton more noise, specifically in the red channel, and it actually clipped the red channel. So in order to fix that, I went ahead and put a curve on the red channel specifically to kind of bring the red down in the shadows, and that helped get rid of some of the noise. Now, this is where things get kind of cool. When I posted on the RED Komodo groups, we found out that there was a way to calibrate the blacks on the camera before you shoot. So Matt went ahead and did that and got another shot with a record player in his studio at home. And I can tell you, after grading it, there was significantly less noise in the shadows. So again, huge props to RED for helping us out with that one. Now, also on that same post, like I mentioned, I talked to the guy that actually invented the R3D file. He helped me grade the fireside shot to a point where it's actually usable. Now, something I do have to mention here is the noise reduction that I used is the stock noise reduction that is in DaVinci Resolve. I just switched over to Resolve, so I'm kind of learning as I go, but I can tell you already that the color grading suite in DaVinci Resolve is far superior to anything that I have ever used in my filmmaking career. I was able to get some really usable noise reduction, and it actually turned the fireside shot from this to this. Now, I know the shot's not perfect, but it is definitely more usable than it was before. And also, if I play with it a little bit more, I'm sure I could get it to look even better. So now let's talk about ProRes. When I talked to Matt about shooting this video, I wanted to make sure that we had several comparisons of the R3D files versus the ProRes internally on the camera. Now, since Matt filmed these clips in the morning, the sun was actually rising as he was shooting the ProRes shots, so there is a little bit more light. But something that I do want to mention is there's significantly less noise in the shadows on ProRes. Now, I don't know if there's some kind of internal noise reduction going on inside the processing for ProRes in the camera, but I did notice that there was visibly less noise in the ProRes files. So now I wanted to take the ProRes and compare them side by side. So here we have the same shot of Matt playing guitar in both ProRes and in RAW. So I went ahead and I graded them with the exact same LUT so that we could see how they worked. And to be honest with you, I'm really impressed with the way the ProRes performs on this camera. But I do want to give a massive point to R3D because, like I said, with that R3D file, I was able to really push the image by the campfire, and I got a really good image with a lot of work in post when it comes to color grading. The R3D files just hold together really well, and that's to be expected because the R3D files are 16-bit versus the ProRes files, which are 10-bit. And another thing that's really easy to see on this freeze frame of the ProRes versus the R3D files is the highlight roll-off in R3D is significantly better. If you look at Matt's head specifically, you can see that the highlights aren't nearly as focused and narrowed in on his forehead, and they kind of spread out and look a bit more natural. Now, like we've mentioned before, we are really new to the RED ecosystem. I've used REDs on sets before and I've edited a few files, but other than that, I don't really have a ton of experience, and Matt has never even touched a RED camera. So this is our first RED camera to really dive into and really get to use and learn and explore. And as we do that, we're going to be documenting it and posting it on this YouTube channel. So we hope you guys stick around and watch the journey. Now, one more thing I do want to mention is the RED community. Right now, everybody is at each other's throats about absolutely everything. In pretty much every camera group that I'm a part of on Facebook, everything is just so angry and hostile and calling people stupid for not using certain products. It's just super negative, and it's not really a space that I enjoy being a part of. But on the flip side, when it comes to RED owner groups and RED support groups, everybody in there is really trying to push everyone forward as a group to make sure that everybody is successful as they can possibly be. I can't be thankful enough with the way that the RED community has helped Matt and I focus in on what our issues are so that we can correct them and make better content. So from everybody at Gear Focus to the RED family, we seriously thank you guys so much. You guys are awesome. All right, guys, so that's going to do it for me today. If you like this video, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. That stuff really does help us out here on the channel. We're actually really trying to make a push to get to 5,000 subscribers by the 1st of November. So if you guys can make sure you hit that subscribe button, we would really appreciate that. All right, guys, that's going to do it for me today. We really appreciate you watching this video. If you want to follow along with my freelance journey, I'm really active on Instagram. It's the platform that I use the most. So I'd really appreciate it if you guys gave me a follow over there on Instagram. And while you're over there, make sure you follow the Gear Focus Instagram as well, as we post new deals on the website every week. All right, everybody, I will see you in the next one. Stay safe, stay healthy, and stay creative. Peace.